She endured the jokes about being too pretty for military service, the assumptions that she got her job because of her looks, the daily reminders that real soldiers earned respect through combat, not beauty. Lisa Rodriguez served meals at Fort Liberty with quiet dignity while officers questioned her every claim about military experience. They saw a woman in food service and decided that was all she could ever be. But when the biological attack warning shattered their normal Tuesday lunch, everything they thought they knew about the woman behind the serving counter was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. Because some veterans hide their service in plain sight, and some heroes wear aprons instead of medals. If you believe every service member with military background deserves respect at all times, type respect in the comments and subscribe for more stories that honor our quiet heroes. Lisa Rodriguez had been working at Fort Liberty's main cafeteria for 8 months. At 42, she moved through the serving line with quiet efficiency, wearing the standard food service uniform that made her invisible to most personnel she served. But not to Captain Marcus Peterson, Captain Jake Morrison, and Captain David Cole. They occupied Table 7 during lunch service, making Lisa Rodriguez their daily entertainment. They had decided she was nothing more than eye candy in an apron. Peterson had made it his personal mission to remind Lisa of her place in the military hierarchy. Morrison contributed observations about women who tried too hard to fit into military culture. Cole preferred direct approaches, making comments about how certain jobs required different qualifications. The pattern had become predictable. Other personnel learned to time their meals to avoid the uncomfortable atmosphere around Table 7. But Lisa continued her work with professional dignity, never responding to provocations or defending herself against their assumptions. What none of them knew was that Lisa Rodriguez had specifically requested assignment to Fort Liberty's food service as part of her transition back to civilian life. After 3 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan as a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear defense specialist, she was using her final year of military service to decompress from operational stress. The decision to work in food service hadn't been random. As a staff sergeant with expertise in NBC warfare, she would have been immediately assigned to high-stress positions that she wasn't ready to handle after her recent medical leave. The medical leave was something she preferred not to discuss. The IED explosion outside Kandahar had left her with a traumatic brain injury requiring months of rehabilitation. While her cognitive abilities had recovered, losing 2 team members had left her struggling with PTSD symptoms that made high-pressure environments difficult. Food service provided perfect cover for gradual reintegration into military life. She could maintain her skills through observation while avoiding the intensity of active NBC operations. Unfortunately, it also meant enduring daily assumptions from officers who saw only her current assignment. The morning of October 23rd started routinely. Peterson was discussing the difference between real military experience and uniform tourism, making pointed glances toward the serving line. Morrison added thoughts about people who claimed combat experience but couldn't handle actual military responsibilities. Lisa continued her work, but today's conversation felt more pointed, more deliberate. She had experienced this pattern before, the gradual escalation of hostility that preceded more serious incidents. At 1,147 hours, Peterson raised his voice deliberately, ensuring Lisa could hear his observations about people who wore military-adjacent clothing but lacked experience. Morrison contributed comments about the difference between serving food and serving in combat. Lisa's hands remained steady as she portioned servings, but her situational awareness had increased. Years of combat experience had taught her to recognize escalating tension. At 1,203 hours, the base's public address system crackled with an announcement that changed everything. Biological contamination alert. All personnel implement immediate lockdown procedures. This is not a drill. Repeat, biological contamination detected. Implement NBC protocols immediately. The cafeteria erupted in chaos. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Chairs scraped as personnel stood, many uncertain about proper procedures. Some headed toward exits, others remained frozen. Peterson and his companions looked around with expressions of officers who had studied NBC procedures in training but never implemented them under actual threat. Morrison started toward the exit before realizing lockdown meant no movement. Cole pulled out his phone despite knowing communication protocols prohibited unauthorized transmissions. Lisa Rodriguez set down her serving spoon and stepped out from behind the counter. Her movement was smooth, purposeful, carrying the authority of someone who had faced this exact scenario before. The transformation was immediate and unmistakable. Gone was the quiet food service worker. In her place stood a combat veteran whose NBC warfare expertise had been earned through real-world experience. Lisa's voice carried clearly across the panicked cafeteria as she began implementing lockdown procedures with professional precision. She directed personnel to seal ventilation systems, establish contamination control points, and organize decontamination supplies. Her instructions were specific, detailed, delivered with calm authority of someone who had managed similar crises under combat conditions. Peterson watched in amazement as the woman he had dismissed took control with expertise exceeding his own training. Morrison and Cole found themselves following her directions without question, their earlier mockery forgotten. For 45 minutes, Lisa Rodriguez managed every aspect of the contamination response. She coordinated with base security, established communication protocols with medical personnel, and supervised decontamination procedures. Her knowledge of biological agents, exposure protocols, and treatment procedures was extensive and immediately applicable. When the all-clear signal sounded, indicating the contamination alert had been a false alarm triggered by a malfunctioning sensor, the cafeteria remained silent as personnel processed what they had witnessed. Peterson approached Lisa with the expression of someone whose worldview had been fundamentally altered. She explained that she had served 3 combat deployments as an NBC specialist, with extensive experience in chemical and biological threat assessment. She described operations in Iraq where her team had responded to actual chemical attacks, managing casualties under enemy fire. She detailed her role in Afghanistan, where her unit had provided NBC defense for forward operating bases with confirmed biological weapon threats. The Purple Heart she had earned came from cumulative exposure to chemical agents during decontamination operations where she had prioritized saving others over protecting herself. Morrison asked why she was working in food service instead of utilizing her specialized training. Lisa explained her transition process, her medical leave, and her deliberate choice to decompress through civilian-adjacent work. Cole asked why she had never corrected their assumptions. Lisa's answer addressed the deeper issue of respect in military culture. She explained that respect shouldn't be conditional on rank or combat experience. Every person serving deserved basic dignity, regardless of their current assignment. Lisa pointed out that their daily mockery had been based on assumptions about appearance and job assignment rather than actual knowledge of her capabilities. This approach created toxic environments that undermined unit cohesion and operational effectiveness. The incident became a catalyst for broader changes at Fort Liberty. Base leadership used Lisa's experience as an example of hidden expertise throughout military communities, emphasizing the importance of respecting all service members regardless of their current roles. Peterson, Morrison, and Cole received formal counseling about professional conduct and bias recognition. Lisa Rodriguez was offered immediate transfer to NBC operations, but chose to complete her planned transition while serving as an informal advisor for emergency preparedness training. This story reminds us that quiet heroes often serve in unexpected roles, carrying expertise that isn't immediately visible. They don't demand recognition. They simply do what needs to be done when the moment requires their unique skills. If Lisa's story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And type "respect for soldiers" in the comments, because every quiet hero's story deserves to be heard, and every act of service deserves to be remembered.